Well, we are all really excited to be here. The impetus for this was my book that came out yesterday called Moms Don't Have Time to, a Quarantine Anthology, which is a collection of 60 plus essays by authors from the podcast Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books, which Jewel and Kelly have been a part of, and also my Instagram Live, although almost almost Instagram Live, both of you, but that's okay.
Another technological goof.
So for my book, I divided it into 5 categories. Moms don't have time to read, eat, work out, breathe, and have sex. And tonight is a read event, fortunately. And who better to talk about reading than Dr. Rhodes, Kelly, and my mom, who has always been the biggest reader and could always find her on her bed in the afternoon with a book, hopefully awake, sometimes not. So she has modeled reading for me forever. And so it's a pleasure to be here with her tonight. And of course, you guys. So we're going to do a lot of fun talking about books, but I also wanted to point out that the proceeds for the proceeds from Moms Don't Have Time To are going to the Susan Felice Owens Program for COVID-19 Vaccine Research, which is named after my late mother-in-law, my husband Kyle's mom, and his sister Stephanie. And so we're going to watch a really short video explaining why the proceeds are going there and what Mount Sinai Health System is doing to pioneer research and help the developing world find a new vaccine. So here you go. My daughter did that, by the way.
Hi, everyone. I'm Zibby Owens, and I helped found the Susan Felice Owens Program for COVID-19 Vaccine Research at Mount Sinai Health System. And the reason I did this is to spare other families from going through some of the pain that I saw firsthand when my husband's family, his mother and grandmother, passed away from COVID this summer. It's not just about them, it's about so many other people. However, having seen what happens up close and personal, I couldn't sleep at night knowing that I didn't do everything I could to help other people from avoiding what happened. So for the good of everybody, and to give back, and to honor Susan Owens, who was an amazing, inspiring, giving woman herself, I didn't want her to be forgotten because of this horrific virus. She deserves to be known by everybody and remembered.
So my name is Peter Felice, and I'm chairman of the Department of Microbiology at the I-10 School of Medicine at Mount Sinai. And we have, and we means Adolfo Garcia Sastre, Florian Kramer, and myself, we have been spearheading the attack against COVID-19. And we have a long history of working with influenza viruses, which are also respiratory viruses and RNA viruses. And we have worked for many years together, but we are independent groups. And we have sort of joined forces to, and this is now 10, 12 months old, to find ways of fighting this tremendous threat we have. And you know the numbers, it's terrible. I mean, I've seen now we have over 1 million deaths worldwide. So this is really a terrible, terrible situation.
My name is Adolfo Garcia Sastre, and I'm here in Sinai now for 30 years. I started actually as a postdoc with Peter, and we have been always very interested in trying to develop new technologies to improve vaccines for respiratory viruses, starting with influenza, and now also trying to make an impact with COVID-19. So, I mean, some of the things that we have been doing, we have developed what is called reverse genetics for influenza. And we are trying to use now these also reverse genetics strategies to develop a universal flu vaccine that will cover all influenza viruses that they are possible, that will make annual vaccination with flu meaningless, because you just need a few shots and that's it, and that will prevent pandemics for flu, because it will be covered also all the pandemic strains of influenza. But now we are talking about COVID, and we really want to make also an impact there. So we have taken advantage of a platform strategy that we are developing for emerging viruses, which is based on a platform that is very easy to manufacture, that is highly immunogenic, that can be produced at very high doses, at very low cost, and that is giving us tremendous results in now animal models, and we try to move them forward to humans, and we have a lot of help on that. And I want to, again, like Peter, I want to thank all the help that we have received from philanthropy. But we really think that we have something that is very unique, and that it can be deployed quickly than what is being deployed right now, and then also will address the problems that there are with variants and in the long run. So hopefully we can move this forward, because I'm very excited about this technology.
So we have, with this COVID-19 vaccine approach, we believe we have a very low cost approach. Namely, we can produce it, manufacture it very cheaply, because it's done similar to influenza virus vaccines. And so one can take advantage of these production facilities all over the world, particularly for low income and middle income countries. And then we also we can give it into the nose. Change, as Adolfo said, very fast to these new variants, which are propping up constantly. And we hope that this will be a way of really making it available to many, many people. And we are doing a phase 1 trial here at Mount Sinai. It's wonderful. We have fantastic stability data. It is for weeks stable at refrigerator temperatures, 2 to 4 degrees centigrade, but also we have gotten within the last 2 days at 37 degrees, which is very, very high. It is stable for many, many days. So that is really very, very good news, and we are very excited about that.
Guys, thank you so much for all your donations and the idea of maybe donating. This is not only important to me, obviously, because of my mom or my grandmother. It's important to me for everything that we're all going through in the entire world. And I really, really, really appreciate it. So thank you, and much love to everyone out there.
Hi, I just want to thank everyone from the bottom of my heart. This means so much to me. Thank you.
So that's why I'm donating all the proceeds to Mount Sinai Health System. That was my husband, obviously, and his sister. And anyway, sorry to get this off on a sad foot, but it is really important. And just in the world of irony, which these novelists will appreciate, I actually have COVID now myself, which I got 7 days ago, and am doing this from bed. So anyway, COVID is obviously not gone yet, and the Mount Sinai folks are in the process of finding a vaccine that's now going to in-person clinical trials that can be delivered up the nose with one dose and is more shelf stable. And is really seen as a potential leader in all developing countries that can't afford the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines. So we're crossing our fingers and hoping that something other than lots of great stories comes out of this book. And now, speaking of stories, I was hoping to hear about everybody's all-time favorite books, and also some of the most recent books that you've loved. So why don't we start, if you don't mind, and why don't we go around like a little round robin here of everybody sharing, starting with Dr. Rhodes, one of your all-time favorites. And
all-time favorites?
Yes.
One of my all-time favorites is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, and it's a remarkable novel. I've taught it many times. You know, this terrific woman who literally started a new genre of science fiction, but there's so much from Milton's Paradise Lost to romantic poetry to origin stories. There's just so much in that book. So forget the movies, read the book, and it's absolutely terrific about humanity's hubris and the search of even a monster for a father and for a helpmate.
Wow. Okay, I'm a little intimidated. All right, Mom, why don't you go next?
Well, first of all, I just want to say thanks, Zibby, for inviting me. I mean, what a treat to have my daughter ask me to do something with her, no matter when it is or where it is. So thank you. And I'm delighted to be here. I have to say my all-time favorite is basically reading any book to my children when they were growing up or my grandchildren now. That's been my all-time favorite when I think about reading. And I think back to The Witches by Roald Dahl and how my daughter and son had so much fun with the long black gloves. And then we taught it in school, read it in school for you when you were in nursery school. So that's got to be my all-time favorite time having to do with reading. But if I really had to pick one or two books, I'd say.
Okay. We're going to cycle through.
Stop,
Wait.
stop. Okay, we'll go back. I've said too much.
I just have to say that was lovely, Ellen. And it is such a pleasure to be able to read to your children. But I just thought that was just beautiful. And you made me miss not being near my grandchild to be going through that. But yes, but bravo, Ellen. That's so sweet.
You. Thanks.
Zibby, you were lucky, girl. You and your kids are really lucky, and the grandkids.
Should I not admit that I don't remember The Witches at all?
It's okay. It's okay. I remember it.
That I read it, but anyway. How about you, Kelly? One of your.
I was actually going to pick a book that I think we wrote about in our essay in Moms Don't Have Time To, for the reasons that Ellen was saying. A Big Mooncake for Little Star is a picture book by Grace Lynn that I read to my daughter almost every night now. It is the one that she requests above all others, above Goodnight Moon. And it's the story of a mother and daughter who bake a mooncake that actually turns out to be the moon itself every month. And the mama says, now little star, don't take a bite of that mooncake. And every night she sneaks out of bed and takes a little bite, and the mooncake gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And every month they have to bake the cake again. And it's just, right now, I think it's very powerful to have something that's stable in my daughter's life sort of during this pandemic. And it's become my most treasured book for the reasons that Ellen brought up.
Well, I'm going to add a children's book now to this mix too, because one of my favorite books is Mo Willems' We Are in a Book, because I think that is just so genius. When they say they're in a book and you're turning the page, Anyway, I love that. And I love reading to my own 4 kids. And my daughter actually in the chat is saying that her favorite book is Knuffle Bunny, which my mom reads to her often. So I let my daughter here have another say. 3 generations.
3 generations.
Yeah.
All right, Dr. Rhodes, we're back with your pick number 2.
Okie dokie. I'm also into all these serious topics, but going in terms of time, I would pick Kate Chopin's The Awakening. It's a novel and other stories, and it was written in 1899, where Kate Chopin was trying to express women's sexuality, some of their dissatisfaction with some marital relationships. And she also did some important short stories on miscegenation and on passing, but she paid a terrible price as a writer. So for me, that link of a woman trying to give her voice, speak truth to power, the way that all of us are trying to do and teach our kids, and then to be punished and having your writing career taken from you, I find very, very tragic. But she was a brave artist, a brave woman.
I read that in college. That was so good. All right, Mom, what's your next pick?
A book. This time it's a book. I think I'd have to pick The Book Thief, which I cannot stop thinking about ever. And I know, Zibby, you know how fascinated and intrigued I've always been with the Holocaust and stories, fiction, nonfiction, about people's persecution, but also just how people have the will to survive. Reading The Book Thief was so interesting to me because it's told from the German side. We often read about the tragedies that happened to Jews and gay people and crippled people, everything. But we don't often think about how, or at least I hadn't thought about how World War II, the Nazi regime, would impact German citizens, because not all German citizens were bad. Let's just put it that way. And I just think The Book Thief has always stayed with me. And of course, it's about books and reading and the joy that you can get in the escapism as well.
Perfect. Kelly.
A book that I really love and that has been really formative for me as a writer is Beloved by Toni Morrison. Right now, we're sort of in a very exciting Black renaissance where we have lots of great, Black television shows, movies, books, and a lot of them, have a horror element that I think Toni Morrison was one of the first to kind of spearhead to show how horror and ghost stories can be used to express some of the elemental racial trauma that she lived through and that she was trying to communicate at the time. And I remember reading Beloved when I was a teenager and staying up all night, terrified. And it was just the power of harnessing that fear into something beautiful and something that is art. Is something that I think about a lot and something that I've been thinking about since, the movie Get Out came out, and we've been starting to see these new, the work of N.K. Jemisin, a lot of these genre fiction works by Black writers. But Beloved is also very much a story about a mother and a daughter, although a very dark and very tragic one. And it's one of my favorites forever, for sure.
One of mine is called The Rules of Inheritance by Claire Bidwell Smith. It's a memoir by someone who is now a grief counselor. And it's about losing her mother when she was young. Her mother was very ill, and then she died right when Claire was in college and exploring her own identity and trying to come of age with her mother having just passed away, and then her father gets sick and he dies. And it's a beautiful meditation on grief and loss and resilience. And actually my husband and his production company optioned it, so they're going to be making it into a limited series. So that's one of mine. Okay, Dr. Rhodes, you're up.
Okay, all right. Well, moving along, the next one for me would be Watership Down by Richard Adams. The great animal story about two brothers who their land homed is destroyed by the encroaching human civilization, and they have to go and seek a new place to be, a new way to be as a community. And it's just a great allegory for the exiled trying to find peace and prosperity and kindness. And I love it. There's also a phrase in Watership Down where the bunnies that don't survive get into thorn. And thorn is where, when they're terrified, they freeze. And actually, I must tell you that occasionally my husband tells me, "You're in thorn." That vulnerability, I freeze. And then I do think of the bunnies in Watership Down, that no, I've got to keep moving forward or being resilient so I can make it to the promised land. Also, I'm going to try to write a great animal story. So that's sort of also part of my connection.
My kids were very disappointed there were no animals in my recent book and no pictures. But anyway, next time. Mom, how about you?
It's not such an old classic, but it probably will be, is When the Crawdads Sing. I've loved that book by Delia Owens so much. I've read it twice. The first time I read it, it was just an amazing plot with beautiful language. But then Delia Owens spoke at our literary society here in Scottsdale, and the stories that she told, the way she used language, the way she described loneliness and her isolation in the wilds in Africa for so many years, it made me want to go back and reread the book. And that time, the second time I read it, Zibby, so slowly that I could catch every single word. And I knew what would happen, so I could focus more on the language rather than just the plot. I love, love, love that book.
That was great. Kelly?
I might do kind of a double because I think it speaks to Jules' influence on me as a reader. I love Jane Eyre, like most teenage girls. I was crazy for it. I still love Jane Eyre and read it at least once a year. But Jewel recommended that I read The Wide Sargasso Sea. Which is a retelling of Jane Eyre from the perspective of the wife in the attic, who in this version of the story comes from the Caribbean. And it's just, it's a wonderful sort of take and feminist take on what was already a feminist classic that just added depth and layers to my reading. So thanks, Mom.
You're allowed a double, then you can skip. My next one is another memoir by Dani Shapiro. I was going to say Slow Motion because that's been one of my all-time favorites. I'll do a double too, but I also really love her book Inheritance, which is her when she realizes that her father is not her father, and the DNA unveiling that she finds out right away. I'm not giving it away because it happened really early in the book. But anyway, Dani Shapiro is one of my favorite authors, and those are two of my favorites. Before we go to the next round, maybe we could take a quick break from the book picks and just talk about when we find time to read. Lily, I know you have a 4-year-old. When do you find time to read?
Too late at night and during my insomnia. If I'm stressed about anything, I always get extra reading time because I'll wake up early. And the side bonus is I get to make myself some oatmeal or something and read a few pages here and there. But during the rush of the day, it really is hard to read grown-up books.
Grown-up books, I like that. How about you, Dr. Rose, when you're not reading for work?
Well, it is hard to read grown-up books, and that's why I love it that in the spring I teach courses at Arizona State because then I have to do a book for each course every week. And because I pick the books, they're all the ones that I love talking about. But later tonight, I will start doing some reading on New York City and the African-American populace in the 19th century there as research for a new novel that I'm working on. So there's that research reading, but I also just love the teaching reading, especially, when you have something like Celeste Niang's Little Fires Everywhere, and you have a group of, undergraduate students going, and, talking and learning and discovering that book. To me, reading and teaching reading is just fantastic.
Is there something that you notice about books when you're teaching them? Like, do you go through and read it sentence by sentence and slow down and underline? Like, how do you take apart a book?
Oh, well, absolutely. And some of the books, I do change, some of the books for the course, but some are like on their 4th or 3rd round of teaching. And so I have all these years of notes, but I also have the students go into the text too and say, okay, see these 2 sentences, tell me what does this mean, and deconstruct it in terms of the language. And I loved, Ellen, what you said in terms of the rhythm of the language, because particularly, in the Southern, dialects and in African American culture or even Irish culture, there's a lot of cultures where that orality, the rhythm of it becomes very, very important. So we talk about all kinds of nuances like that, and also word choices, so right now we're reading Brian Stevenson's Just Mercy. And, we talk about, just mercy, and it matters. It shifts a little bit if you put the emphasis on mercy, just mercy, or just mercy. It's different. And to hear the kids talk about that, so that's I love that sort of close reading. So that's what I do, and that's what I do with my students, and that's what they get on their final exams. What does this mean?
Been so long since I've been in an English class. I had to have a little refresher there. Mom, where do you like to read the most? Although I probably know the answer, but.
Well, first of all, I always read when I get in bed at night. Always. That's a given. That's a part of how I go to sleep at night. But my most favorite times of the day are when I can find an hour, 45 minutes to lay on my bed, which you mentioned earlier, with a good book. And the most frustrating is when the book is just so-so. And I figure out, oh, I'm relaxing, I'm transporting myself away, but I really need to put this down and find another book. So I'm always with a book. I feel frustrated and unhappy when I don't have something going. Basically, before I go to bed, and if I allow myself the freedom to lay on my bed late in the afternoon, that would be great.
My mom, oh, go
Can
ahead.
I add that I definitely think your mom and I have to have lunch in Scottsdale,
Sure.
because I also love that idea that when a book is so that you can set it aside. I think a lot of people have that tyranny that, no, I'm going to go ahead and finish it. But the world is so full of so many wonderful stories and talented people. So yeah, I'm with you. You give the book its due and its respect, but not every book is for every person, or your aesthetic of what makes a story can be different. So it's really about finding that kinship between you, the story, and this writer. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm like your mom.
Oh, well, maybe I'll audit your course. I'd love to do that. But it's interesting, to your point, I was mentioning to Zibby just recently that I was so frustrated because I'd started so many books lately during COVID, and they were too predictable and I had to put them down. And she was very quick to say and suggest, I think 3 or 4 books, 2 of which I've already read, which I absolutely adored. So she's my go-to for recommendations from now on, always.
I don't know about Dr. Rose. I don't know about you and Kelly. We don't always share our same taste, Mom. You and I.
That's true.
And she'll say this is amazing, or I just can't get into it, or something. But there were a few books I recommended lately, and I can just share them now because I feel like it's hard to read these books without really getting enthralled. And one is called American Daughter, which is apropos of tonight's theme. American Daughter by Stephanie Thornton Plymale. Have you read that or heard of it?
I've heard it. I have not read it.
Very, very good.
Stephanie was born into well, I'm not even gonna. I won't even go into it. It's an amazing memoir. She was homeless. She was abused. It's amazing. It's a life story of resilience and overcoming so many odds. And it's really grippingly written. And then what else did I suggest, Mom? I think Send for Me, the new Lauren Fox book.
Send for Me, which I love, by Lauren Fox, which I just adored. But also one of my all-time favorites is Lovers and Writers, or Writers and Lovers by Lily King.
Yes.
That was so amazing that I've started Euphoria today.
Oh,
I ordered that after I finished, Lily King's book. And I was so excited last night, Zibby. I felt like a little groupie when I saw her on your, in your launch. I thought, oh my gosh, there's my favorite writer of today. That's only today. I could change tomorrow, but they were great recommendations.
And also Britt Bennett, The Vanishing Half is one of the best books I've read lately.
Yeah.
Yes. So. Now, Kelly suggested The Vanishing Half for me.
Yes, so good.
You can see it. I have stacks of my school books and things that I'm teaching her to read are over there. And so that's on my shelf. So on your recommendations, Mom and Daughter, I will start that tonight. I'll my research.
Yeah. The Vanishing Half is actually an interesting case because I actually haven't read it yet, because the project I'm working on right now is a story about 2 sisters born in the Jim Crow South, one of whom is light enough to pass for white and one of whom is obviously Black, reuniting to learn more about the murder of their parents. And I'm dying to read The Vanishing Half, but sometimes as a writer, when something is too close, I feel like you want to stay away and have a little bit of distance until you've done your work. So my book goes to copy edits tomorrow, and I will be diving into The Vanishing Half on Friday.
Yeah. You recommended it to me without reading it first.
Oh yeah, well no, I mean I told you because we were talking about passing books, but yeah.
Well, it's really good. I cleared time in the schedule because it was one of those books where I sat there and I think it was a Saturday and I just read until the sun went down and it was like pitch black and I took my phone flashlight and it was like because I didn't even want to get up. So
all right, well, I'm gonna honor all 3 of you wonderful women and I will start it.
Kelly, what happens if your book ends up being like exactly the same?
I really do believe that the way writing works, everyone's brain is so different. Everyone's story is so personal by the time you've shaped it and worked it. My book at this point has gone through 5 or 6 major revisions that there's no way. So when I first had the concept, I was a little bit concerned, but as it gets more and more specific with every revision, it just gets less and less likely. So I'm pretty confident it'll be pretty different, but I am antsy and eager to read The Vanishing Half because as a light-skinned Black person, there has not been that much literature about passing as an experience. So of course I'm dying to get my hands on it, and have been really dying for that since I was a teenager myself. So my book that I wrote is also young adult as opposed to young adult. So it's about the teenager's experience of how do I navigate my identity as a light-skinned person in a family with people of darker skin and all of that. So slightly different focus.
And I remember when I interviewed Dr. Rhodes, she said that Black Brother was actually based loosely on your own family, and that your brother presents as much darker than you are. And yes.
Pretty much captures us. Yep. Yeah.
And Zibby, you gotta call me Jewel. It's like,
okay.
Jewel. It's like you're my sister friend that I've never met in person, that I always have a wonderful time with, and I admire not only the work that you've done on the book, the podcast, but also the philanthropy, the generosity. So please stop saying Dr. Rhodes. We're buddies. We're Jewel. My students at ASU can call me Dr. Rhodes or Professor Rhodes, which actually, by the way, when you're a woman professor, there is still that lingering sense that they will call the man Dr. Rhodes, or but they'll call Mrs. or Ms. to the woman, even though she might have the same title. So just I don't know if you remember that from your days when you were in college, but that still happens. But anyway, or maybe not. Yeah.
I don't know. All I am remembering now from college is The Awakening.
But that's wonderful. Well, I would like to know, Ellen, do you ever write? Do you have writing stories or memoir, or thought about writing your book? Someone who has read as widely as you, who has, such your life and wonderful raising of your kids. Is there a memoir that we might get to read one day?
I don't think so.
Fabulous. No,
I don't think so. I think Zibby will attest to this. I am a good writer and a better editor. But I don't think I have a lot to say. So I think you have to have, you disagree?
I would not say that you don't have a lot to say. What on earth? I would not agree with that.
Uh-oh.
Well, that's you're belittling yourself. Everybody has a story to tell.
I think it's the style in which you tell the story. When I read these memoirs, and you read these rags to riches, we've all read Hillbilly Elegy and The Tender Bar and all these stories. The story is the same, underprivileged rises to, a Ivy League school and becomes a success. But it's the writing style, in my opinion, the writing style that captures you. And so to me, I don't have the style to write. Like Zibby has a great style, and it flows for her. It always has, from high school, grade school on. And I've often told Zibby that, your writing, it just flows. And that's a gift. And I'm glad that she has that. And I'll continue to read everything that she writes. And occasionally she'll ask me to edit something, which I'm happy to do. Hasn't happened much lately, but we used to do that together. And but in answer to your question, Jewel, I don't think so. The only story I have to tell might be a quick one for my kids and grandkids, just so they know our family history.
Well,
thank you.
But well, you know, Juan, I'm a writing teacher. So I believe with Zibby that everybody has a powerful story to be told. And if you're ever ready, I would be happy to be there right by your side.
Aw, thank you.
Said the thing about grandchildren, I wrote a book, a memoir about porch stories about my grandmother who raised me, because I wanted my family to know about this woman who's been dead for almost 40 years. And
Right.
I actually encourage, you know, grandparents to write their stories, the family stories, to leave for the next generation. But interestingly enough, I'm reading a book. I teach Gary Polson in my children's lit class, his Hatchet book, Adventure and Survival, the kid who falls out of, you know, the plane, the pilot has a heart attack and he has to survive in the woods, and all he has is a hatchet. And it's a wonderful story, interesting rhythm. The students were a little bit shocked by the simplicity of the diction and the sort of like staccato rhythm. But the writer, Gary Paulson, just came out with his own, I guess, autobiography, memoir. I'm not sure what to call it, but he writes about himself in the third person. And I've never read,
Interesting.
you know, somebody telling their story when Gary was 5. You know, it's so I think there might be something there. But anyway, so we can write stories for our grandchildren together. Yeah,
Sounds good.
yeah.
Sounds good.
Maybe that's your next book project. Well, no, that's maybe me and Ellen's book project. Getting a collection of women, you know, leaving the little nuggets or the you know, the little piece of paper in the bottle for the next generation to sweep and catch.
I like your enthusiasm.
My daughter said that she read Hatchet in school last year, and actually my son had also read it in school. So yeah.
Oh yes. Oh well, that's one of my favorite books. And my undergraduate students are reading Hatchet right now. And when I wrote my first children's book, Ninth Ward, about Hurricane Katrina, I wanted to write a Hatchet-like book. So anyway, it means a lot to me.
Amazing. Also, for people who are here watching, we welcome questions in the chat. The chat so far is filled with all the books you could ever buy based on our conversation so far. And I didn't even get to all of mine, but I think you'll know. So if anybody has a question that you want to ask Jewel or Kelly or my mom or me, please add it into the chat and we'll be glad to answer it, or the Q&A over here too.
I have a question for Jewel.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Jewel, is that the galley for Paradise on Fire behind you? Because I haven't seen the cover yet.
Yes.
Yay!
This is my new book that's coming out in September, and it's a middle grade novel, but it's about the California wildfires. Paradise on Fire. Yes, I
had not seen the cover yet, and I was very excited for it.
It came on my birthday, which was Friday. But now that you've called me Jewel, I've got to ask you, Ellen, does Zibby call you Ellen or Mom?
Mom, because there's only 2 people in the world that can call me Mom. And
yeah,
that's what I like.
And Kelly calls me Jewel, and sometimes it's like I go like, who is that person? But you explained, because I asked her why you did it, and you explained it to me why you did it, so that Claire wouldn't get confused. But it's just, you know, it's just very interesting on language. Maybe
I know, I'm so sorry. Well, we did this book tour together over the summer.
Yes.
And we had this kind of professional relationship. And also this summer was the summer that I started calling myself Mom in my head.
Yes. Yes.
Which so was very confusing just for me.
But no, I think it's wonderful. And I think that like there's really something there, because Kelly and we do a lot of work together, but it's like, I'm going to get, maybe I should be, I don't know, Big Mama.
We'll workshop it.
We'll workshop it.
If my daughter is still listening, do not call me Big Mama. Thank you.
No, you shouldn't have said that.
On the record. Yes, thank you. Someone in the chat is asking for us to talk about the subject, Moms Don't Have Time to Write. And by the way, if anybody's interested, I recently started a publication on Medium called Moms Don't Have Time to Write, which is edited by this fantastic journalist, Jordan Blumetti, and myself with them. So anybody who wants to submit essays can do that on any topics that moms don't have time to do. But in terms of Moms Don't Have Time to Write, Kelly, you just finished a book. When did you do that?
So when I was, I'll walk you guys back a little bit. When I was first pregnant with my daughter 4 years ago now, and had the first idea for Agnes at the End of the World, which was my novel that came out this past year, I was very worried that I wouldn't have time to write as a new mom. And I asked my mom, call mom, about that. And she told me that, in fact, sort of ironically, she found that she had more energy and more urgency around writing, even with the reduced time that she had having an infant, that it sort of made it kind of like a magic superpower, that maybe you only had 30 minutes to write and maybe the baby was strapped to your chest, but it got done and the writing was stronger for it. And I thought she was selling me up the river. I thought that was nonsense. And then lo and behold, I had my baby. I'm strapping her to my chest and sitting in my rocking chair, and having some of the best writing experiences of my entire life were in those sleep deprived first 6 months. And I think it was because I didn't have the luxury of having all the time in the world. So what I had was this structured form, this sort of do or die moment every time. And showing up for myself was just kind of like showing up for my soul. I was a mom 99% of the time, but this 1% of the time, this was all me. And it was like time to go hard or go home. And I've tried to cultivate and keep that energy even now as she gets older. In some ways, I think in the toddler years, it's harder because you have more guilt, because if your husband's watching the baby downstairs for 15 minutes, oh, maybe I should be down there with her. But I try and silence those voices and just make the most of what I can with these short periods of time. I've had 2-minute writing sprints. I'll literally set the toothbrush timer from my daughter's toothbrush timer. I'll flip it over and I'll have 2 minutes. And if sometimes in those 2 minutes, the entire plot of my novel will change, or I'll make a big breakthrough. And I really just think that you have to make the most of what you have and treasure what you have, and not wish for that other life where you had 6 to 10 hours to just sit around and write. Because let's be honest, if I had that, I might just watch Netflix. So yes. Yeah.
I have heard that said many times.
I do think having too much time can drive you batty. My story is a little bit different, that I did not become really the fire under me until Kelly was like literally in her crib right there beside my writing desk, and I had this new energy. But I also then learned how to write during difficult pregnancies, write early in the morning, late at night, or I had 30 minutes here, and just write. But the model I had was a male-centric model of, I work, 8 hours a day and somebody takes care of me. This is the old-fashioned. We have such enlightened husbands now, I know we do, but that whole sort of like historic model. And so one of the things I made peace with was time. I used to beat myself up because I didn't have like 4 hours or 2 hours to write. And what would happen is I'd get in a negative reinforcement that then I would dread time and not having enough time to write, and therefore it was harder to write. And just to make peace with that, so I'll take the 30 minutes or the 50 minutes. All you need in some sense is to write 1 page a day, and at the end of the year you will in fact have a book. And one last thing, a book that I would recommend is called Composing a Life. It'll probably read really out of date and old fashioned to everyone, but it was written by Margaret Mead's daughter, Catherine Bateson, Bateson. And I believe she recently died. And that book was very helpful to me because she talked about women who became the president of Spelman College, or a woman who became an entrepreneur. And she actually said men have a hierarchy, or in those days, that they then climb the ladder, or to excellence in whatever chosen field they're in. And she was the first, when I was in my 20s, that had the saying that women, we have an orchestra, and we're composing the movements of our life. And so you could be a stay-at-home mom for this period, you could be an entrepreneur for this period, you can be this for this period. So that sense of composing a life was really very heartfelt to me. So the times when I sometimes maybe didn't have as much of the time and energy to make, quote, the writer's life, well, that's because also part of my life was composing, that was a minor theme, and this might be the major theme. And now, of course, I'm at my major theme of being the writing person. That was so. Be compassionate and loving towards yourself. And sometimes I even put on an album, and it'll be like 50 minutes, right? I'm just going to write for the length of this album. And then sometimes that's all I can do. And every novel has its own different album, its own different playlist. And then if I'm doing well, then I start it off at the beginning again. And sometimes my husband hears that's the same song playing for a year, 2 years, the same old album. So it's sort of like, that's my other little trick. Oh, I can write for an album.
So what album is on your soundtrack now?
Well, actually, right now it's weird. I'm doing classical music to films. And I don't know why, but in particular, the Strings for Adagio by Barber just opens up my soul. Before that, I was doing rapper J. Cole's. For Ghost Boys, I did, Kendrick Lamar. For Ninth Ward, I was doing the film soundtrack to Beasts of the Southern Wild, which was about a Cajun community. So it's like something different, but for some reason, the classical music, though the other one that would work would be Master and Commander for a new book that I'm working on now, which is a mixture of a lot of great classical music. Go figure.
Inspirational.
What you were saying about majors and minors and what you're going to do at different points in your life. When people ask my kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? I'm like, I don't think we should ask that question anymore, because I didn't know what I wanted to be. 10 years ago, I was something else. What do you want to be when you're in your 20s? What do you think you're going to do in your 40s? I don't know. I feel like it's such an evolving thing that people don't, similar to what you were saying, the historic model, you don't just go to a factory and that's what you do most of your life anymore. I feel like everybody is always changing things around, and maybe part of that is the writing life, which you can pick up and put down as often as you want. We have a question from Shelly in the chat, who said, I would love to know from the moms, what is one thing you have learned from your daughters? Did you hear me?
Not that you take that way. No.
Oh, maybe she means all four of us. I thought she meant only the two of you.
Oh, okay, but all of us.
All of us. I mean, we,
Yeah, Claire, your kids,
so I guess
something, yeah.
I mean, having a 4-year-old, the answer is easy. She teaches me every day. I think most toddlers do, to live in the moment. It's very easy to be thinking about a million different things when you're an adult and worried about a million different things. But, if she sees a butterfly, it's like that, her world is that butterfly. and I find a lot of peace sort of getting to be with her in those small moments. It's a daily reminder kind of thing. Yeah.
I learned from my daughter not to ever give up, because my daughter works harder than anybody, and she is persistent, and she just goes after it and never gives up, even if she's not, she runs for student council year after year after year, and she's like, I'll figure out a way to do it again next year. It's amazing. It's totally inspiring. So that's my daughter. Mom and Joel, you have anything?
Well, actually, that I honestly, Kelly has taught me a lot, and I think in particular that sense of evolution and that sense of separateness and the appreciation of a different human being. I love it when she has talents that oh, I can do that too. But I also love it when, when she does things, it's like, how did you do that? Like say being a pianist, that was very moving, and how good she was at music, or being a Girl Scout. I mean, me camping is the Ritz-Carlton, and Kelly, I mean, like, one day I remember telling me they were having, the hurricanes in Miami. And she said, well, I'll just strap Clara to my back and we would walk out of there. And, it's like, yeah, she would. Do you know what I mean? So her name actually, embodies that sort of warrior woman. Kelly is the warrior woman, but the way in which she can take care of herself physically, she can take care of her spirit musically, and then through her writing. And she's such a good mom. And I have learned a lot from her, but that separateness has been really unique. To see her become her own person is like, wow, that is the wonder of life, really.
My turn.
Okay.
I think Zibby has taught me how to be a better parent, how to be a better mom by not interfering, by keeping my opinions to myself, by teaching me, no, seriously, by teaching me that she can do it. And I know, and I can see that she can do it. And, Zibby knows that I am always there for her. But the interesting thing is that she, as we grow older, has taught me that she's okay. She can do it. And that separateness, I guess that's the word, Jewel, that you just used, that I think contributes to even a better relationship.
Yeah.
When you're not hovering, when you're not criticizing and dictating and managing. And I think in our younger lives, Zibby's and mine, I probably did too much of that. So she was a good teacher. She has let me know how to be a better mother to her.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that, Zib?
That was a very interesting answer, Mom.
But I think it is interesting because you have shown me what you need, and more importantly, what you don't need. And I've tried to listen. I don't know if I've done a good enough job for that, or for the listening, but that's been my intent. So I've learned a lot from my daughter, a lot.
I can totally get that, and I'm down with that. But also, it is interesting, the transition, and Zibby and Kelly, you'll go through it too, where in a lot of ways you're so used to you're the nurturer,
right?
That transition of when your child becomes 18 and no medical records, you're not, or you go and you start to fly and soar in your own life. We've still have had 18 years of perhaps maybe behaving in ways that were natural because we were trying to be good parents, and then it changes somewhat. And because just last week Kelly was speaking to me about, Mom, that's your problem,
Right.
don't make it mine. And I was like, whoa. But that loving back respect to be able to do what now I need to do as a mother, based on her being this adult woman, and it's an ongoing process. But yeah, I agree with you, Ellen. We're gonna have lunch and we're gonna go get a massage together.
I'm thinking about the different stages too. I think we as mothers, and I'm sure, Kelly and Zibby probably realize this, but don't know it yet, that day to day, when you're bringing up children, you are a day to day online manager. When they go away to college, you become more distant. It's a good stage to go through. You become much more of a consultant.
Oh.
And then, when they start their own families, you hope, at least I've hoped, that my two kids will welcome me into their homes and their lives and let me share their children and what's going on with them day to day, and their accomplishments and their things that don't go as well as they could. So that's the hope, I think, as we go forward.
Yeah.
Well,
Of course, I'm sorry, Zibby, go ahead.
it's our time here is up, ladies. I feel like a therapist. Our hour is up. Thank you. This has been lovely. Hope you'll think about what we discussed. And it was really fun spending the evening with all of you. Jewel and Kelly, thank you for contributing to my anthology. I probably didn't make that clear in the beginning that you had, and that's why we're all here together. Mom, thank you for coming. And thank you to everybody here who's watching. Thank you to the Center for Fiction for hosting us and making us all feel so welcome.
And I hope you'll all go home and buy the book.
Yes.
A mother can say that.
Yes, and contributors can say that too. And again, it's just been a wonderful experience. Thank you, Melanie, Center of Fiction. Thank you, Zibby. But also getting to see my daughter Kelly and getting to meet you, Ellen. You know, we are, and I think this is at the heart of your work too, Zibby. There's something just so glorious about being a woman, you know, and about being a mom, you know, and having that just added on to all the other multitudes of selves that are inside of us. And so the pleasure of just being with you guys, gosh, it does my soul good. So thank you very much for the inspiration from all of you.
Enjoy the Vanishing Half. We'll expect us.
I will. Okay. I'm gonna. How do you do it, Ellen? You lay down on the bed.
Well,
and
the key is that you allow yourself, you give yourself permission late in the day, if you're tired, to lay on your bed and just escape by reading a little bit.
Okay, that's what I'll be doing tonight.
The best.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all so much. Zibby, thank you. I love you. I'm proud of you. And I love you up to the sky and back again. Always.
Feel better. Feel better.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Everybody, good night.